Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Bill Roggio, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Bill, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Brittany. It's a pleasure to join you.
I wanted today to talk about the escalating conflict we've seen between India and Pakistan. And this week has really reignited a decades-long conflict between the two countries. But India launched an airstrike this week on Pakistan and said the action was a retaliation for a terror attack last month. So to start off the conversation, can you talk to us about the impetus for the latest rise in hostilities?
Yes, the strikes by India, which they said targeted terrorist training camps, which I give a lot of credence to. At least one case, it seems to be confirmed. It seems the brother of a senior terrorist leader of the group, Jaish Mohammed, was killed. He himself was a U.S. designated terrorist as well. And other locations are consistent with where Pakistan has run terrorist training camps. Now, on April 22nd, a group calling itself the Kashmir Resistance, which is a front group for another terrorist organization backed by the Pakistani state known as Lashkar-e-Taiba. It launched an attack in the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir. The attack was much like the Mumbai 2008 Mumbai attack. They infiltrated terrorists. They identified individuals as being Hindu. They didn't want to target Muslims, and they executed them on the spot. 26 people were killed, and I believe over 40 were wounded in the attack. The Indians have traced this back, unsurprisingly, to Pakistan. The Pakistanis claim they have no hand in this, but everyone knows that the Lashkar-e-Taiba is a Pakistani-sponsored, supported and funded terrorist organization. All of these attacks that occur in India, they're ultimately traced back to Pakistani terror groups that operate under the aegis of the Pakistani state.
This isn't new conflict between India and Pakistan. These countries have a long history of conflicts dating back to 1947. So is this latest clash similar to past conflicts?
Yeah, so the history of it, right? The dispute over the Jammu and Kashmir region, which dates all the way back, as you noted, to the partition. Pakistan in the 1970s realized it couldn't get Jammu and Kashmir back militarily. So what it decided to do was it decided to use terrorism as a tool of statecraft, to try to weaken the Indian government, to try to get the Indian government to just give up on maintaining this territory. And that's how it began backing these terrorist organizations. A lot of this, stemmed out of the war in Afghanistan when Pakistan realized that it can use Islamic extremist organizations to further their goals. And it's only escalated over the last several decades. I'd look at a couple of significant attacks that were somewhat similar to what we witnessed in April, the December 2001 attack on Indian Parliament, which was launched by Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish Mohammed. Two terror groups were targeted in yet the other day's attack. You had the 2008 attack, November 2008 in Mumbai. That was when Lashkar-e-Taiba terror assault teams killed almost 170 people and rampaged throughout the city for 3 days straight. Then you had an attack in Uri in Kashmir where 17 Indian soldiers were killed in an attack on a base. So this is just of a piece, really, of the Pakistani-supported terrorist organizations. These terror organizations, by the way, aren't just domestic terror organizations seeking the independence of Kashmir, but they're allied with Al-Qaeda, with the Taliban. They train, they support. Lashkar-e-Taiba was stood up with the help of an individual named Abdul Azam, who's known as the godfather of jihad, and Osama bin Laden encouraged Hafez Saeed, who is the head of Lashkar-e-Taiba, to establish the terror group. It has a local component, and this is all what Al-Qaeda does, has a local component, and it links into the global component as well.
I want to talk about what Pakistan said because this is India's largest military attack on Pakistan since 2019. And the officials there said that the strikes were, quote, an unprovoked and blatant act of war, and they, quote, violated Pakistan's sovereignty. They also added that India deployed the attack based on, quote, the false pretext of the presence of imaginary terrorist camps. What are your thoughts on this? Because I know that last part you already addressed. You said that you see good evidence that there were, at least on one location, a terrorist camp that was attacked.
Yeah, Pakistan routinely denies that it supports terrorist organizations. There is ample evidence for the presence of terrorist organizations in Pakistan. And I'll use Lashkar-e-Taiba. I keep going back to that. It's the premier terrorist organization. Its leader, Hafez Saeed, he appears on television. He's a U.S. specially designated global terrorist. His organization is a foreign terrorist organization. It operates a basically think of it as a university in outside of the town of city of Lahore in Meridki. It's called the Markaz-e-Taiba. It has recruiting centers. It has training camps. It has their own hospital. It has gymnasium. It has a swimming pool. It has, again, I just likened it to like a university within a city. This is what you see. And that's just one of these terrorist groups. Jaish Muhammad has a presence in a town. There was a strike where an individual who is, again, a U.S. listed specially designated global terrorist, he is reported to have been killed. His brother operates freely within Pakistan. I could go on and on, Brittany, with all of the terror organizations that exist within Pakistan with the support of the state.
That's a really interesting point. I want to dive a little deeper in there because if they have such well run terrorist camps, terrorist organizations, how does Pakistan's government involve themselves with that, if at all? I mean, how do they work in tandem? What does that exactly look like?
So the reality is in Pakistan, the military and its intelligence agency, the Inter-Service Intelligence Directorate, is really what calls the shots in Pakistan. The Pakistani government is merely a facade. It exists at the pleasure of the Pakistani state. So if at times, for instance, after Mumbai or after other terror attacks, for instance, Hafez Saeed, who's the head of Lashkar-e-Taiba, he was put under house arrest. He was put in supposedly in detention. But then it goes to court. The court says, oh, he's not guilty of anything, and he's set free. He's never really even put in jail. So this is what Pakistan says, look, we're doing everything we can, but, it's not our fault that the court system, let Hafez see. There is not single individual, and the U.S. and India has directly linked individuals, and I'll just use Mumbai as an example, to that attack. Two members of the Pakistani military, no one in Pakistan has faced justice for the Mumbai attack almost 2 decades later. It's Pakistan does what it needs to do to convince, the people with short attention spans in our government and within the international community that it's doing something. It does just enough. Everyone turns around and looks at the next shiny object, the next big problem, and the next thing you know, Pakistan is right back at it.
So then where do we go from here then? Does it look like India and Pakistan are going to go in all out, full out war? Because I want to read what each country said. Pakistan's defense minister said this, quote, if India attacks, we'll respond. If India backs down, we'll definitely wrap up. But the country did respond, said that they had the right to respond to the latest strikes. And an Indian official said this, quote, the Indian armed forces are fully prepared to respond to Pakistani misadventures, if any, that will escalate the situation. So does either side want to go into war? What do you think?
I don't think either side wants a full-blown war. They're both nuclear powers. A nuclear exchange would devastate each country. So look, after the attack on Parliament and the attack on Mumbai, India didn't respond, even though it had specific evidence, very clear evidence that linked both Pakistan and these terror groups to it. Only after 2016 did India begin responding. So it in my opinion, has been far more patient than it should be. What we've seen since India has responded since 2016 is that these conflicts got to a certain point. India would respond militarily. Pakistan may do something. There might be an exchange of fire. But ultimately, these conflicts have de-escalated. Cooler heads have prevailed. And also the U.S. doesn't want a nuclear exchange. Europe, nobody wants in the region wants a nuclear exchange. And the Chinese, which share a border with both India and Pakistan, don't want nuclear fallout coming across the border. Even though the Chinese benefit by a weakened India, it's because they're competitors or adversaries, whatever you want to, however you want to describe that. They don't want to see a nuclear exchange. So the odds are very good that they'll both back down. But then again, you're dealing, and I was worried. I don't worry about India. I worry about Pakistan because Pakistan is a nuclear power that uses terrorism as a tool of statecraft, and that in itself is insane. But they used it to get the United States to leave Afghanistan by supporting the Taliban and other terrorist organizations there. They've learned from their perspective the right lessons, but from the world's perspective all the wrong lessons, and that's dangerous and unpredictable. But I suspect enough pressure will be put on them, particularly by the Chinese, who do provide them weapons and other military material and do wield some influence within Pakistan.
I mean, that's an interesting point that both India and Pakistan have nuclear capabilities. So that adds a lot here. What do you think specifically that adds to the rest of the world? Is the rest of the world more on guard, more paying attention to this conflict?
Yeah, there's conflicts between states throughout the world. The nuclear angle is what gets everyone's attention here. This is what nobody wants a nuclear exchange. At that point, all bets are off. Can this bleed over into if India feels insecure and there is a nuclear exchange? How does China react? Then how does the U.S. react? That, once nuclear weapons are in the air and on target, all bets are off, and that's what terrifies all world leaders and should terrify every citizen of the globe. And this is why there'll be a lot of pressure put to bear on the Indians and the Pakistanis to de-escalate here. Again, the Indians certainly, they got much better things to do. They're a developing country that's, they're growing. They don't want these problems. It's Pakistan is the instigator in all of these incidents by using terrorism to further a goal that they're just not going to achieve.
Does Pakistan know that it's not going to achieve this goal? I mean, why keep trying for decades and decades and decades? What is the impetus there? Do they think that one day that they'll win against India?
I think the Pakistanis believe that they can wear the Indians down and regain control. Perhaps the Indians tire of this conflict. Perhaps a political party is elected that decides it doesn't want to deal with this problem anymore. But I don't see that happening. This is, there's been different parties throughout the last 70 years, and all of them have stood firm on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. But this is what makes what happened in Afghanistan so dangerous. The Pakistanis, by supporting the Taliban and other terrorist organizations, they forced the withdrawal of the U.S. and got their guy in government in Afghanistan. They got the Taliban in power. So they smell blood in the water. They think that they can achieve a victory. They saw that they achieved a victory in Afghanistan. Why not just stick it out longer? I think that's the way the Pakistanis think here.
President Trump responded to the conflict. He said he gets along with both countries and that India and Pakistan have both, quote, gone tit for tat, and hopefully they can stop now. He also added, if I can do anything to help, I'll be there. What do you think, A, of that response, and B, the United States' position? What, if anything, does the United States need to do?
Well, the United States should just be counseling the Indians to not escalate, first and foremost. As far as the response, it's somewhat disappointing, only in this sense. And look, I'm a person who followed Afghanistan very closely for the last 2 decades. The loss there, it was a unforced error by the United States. We did not have to lose that war. We abandoned an ally. And everyone knows that Pakistan is the main driver for this. Without Pakistan's support, giving the Taliban safe haven, weapons, cash, all of the support that it gave to the Taliban would have been a shell of itself. Then you would have had a imperfect but functioning government within Afghanistan that would have been an American ally. So to say that the U.S. has good relations with Pakistan, it's disappointing to me. But that maybe I'm a little too close to that issue.
I know that the big question on the world's lips is, are these two countries on the brink of war here? And you're saying they don't seem to want to go out into a full out war. The rest of the world certainly doesn't want to see two nuclear capable countries in a full all out war. So, what specifically are you looking out for next?
Yeah, I'm waiting for the Pakistanis haven't launched a retaliatory attack against India at this moment. So that to me is the real question. And will the what I've seen in the Pakistani press and statements from Pakistani leaders is a lot of bluster that they've shot down Indian jets and they've foiled this and they've stopped that. And they're putting the pressure on the Indians. But what I haven't seen them do is launch a full scale attack on India. To me, the what I'm looking for is the first country to blink. Will it be India? Will it be Pakistan? The last round in 2019, India launched some strikes against Pakistan. Pakistan did a minimal response and it de-escalated from there. The question for me is like, will the Indians allow the Pakistanis to get the last word here? So I do believe that this will de-escalate. I'm just more interested in how this de-escalates. I suspect the Indians will want to have the last word, will want to launch the last rocket or the last artillery shell into Pakistan because, frankly, this government is quite tired of the antics of the Pakistani state.
Well, there's certainly a lot to look out for, and as this situation continues to develop, I hope you come back on and join me and break it down. Bill Roggio, thank you for coming on.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.